Hello, hello, my friends. It's Jennifer McCollum here from the Parent Coach Club. And I have the fabulous Amy Saloner with me today. Hello, Amy.
Hello, Jennifer.
So wonderful to have you here. There are so many things. Before I started recording, we were talking about what are we going to talk about today? You have so many fascinating aspects of your work, but we narrowed it down to one thing. And so what we're going to talk about today is how to make meaning of our teens as they sprout their wings. And I think that is such a great topic. So thank you for being here to speak to that today, Amy.
I am so honored to be here to speak with you about it.
All right, so I'm going to do a real short intro to you, but I want to hear lots more about you. So for those of you watching and tuning in, Amy is a licensed clinical social worker and a functional nutritional therapy practitioner.
It's a mouthful, right?
It's fab, and you can see why we had so many things we could talk about here. Amy, you're also a mother and a stepmother and a founding member of an intentional community, which is so cool. Maybe you'll come back and we'll talk about that someday.
Yeah.
You're a wife and a woman, a spiritual being having a human experience. I just love how that just engulfs who you are, but that's also not it. So tell us, Amy, a little bit about you, how you got into this work, and then we'll dive into our topic today.
For sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've worked for a number of years. I worked the first part of my career for about 10, 15 years in community mental health and regional centers with families. I worked a lot with teens and with families of children with developmental challenges. And I absolutely loved that work in working with families, but I had a family of my own, so I stepped aside and I moved on to do some other things. And after some time of having some health challenges, I really got into nutrition. And a few years back, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, I went back to school and I became a functional nutritional therapy practitioner. And what that means is it's just I work with families around nutrition. I do a real physical exam, and I'm also trained to do blood chemistry. So I can read blood labs and things like that. So what I did was I took all of my most favorite things that I'm most passionate about. So working with teens, working with families, working on health and nutrition and just lifestyle in general. And I put it all together in my practice to really just be a coach for families to help their not just the teen really, because I really love working with families to help empower them to feel like they have the tools that they need to launch their teens and themselves to be these really confident, empowered beings in the world, because that's what we need. We need leaders, young people who are both feel passionate but feel alive and vibrant in their whole being. So I bring into my work, the body, the mind, the heart, and the spirit. And that's the way I work. So that's the private practice that I'm in now. And it's been really exciting.
That is so beautiful. And there's not enough talk around the nutritional aspect. And I love that you incorporate that into your coaching. I think that's super important. And it makes you super unique in what you do too. And the service that you offer is very valuable.
Thank
So
you.
today you're here to talk about our teens and how to make meaning of them, being teens, trying to sprout their wings. And I know you talk a lot about rites of passage. Can we talk about that and explain to us what that is?
Yes. So, a rite of passage is really a marking in time in a person's life where they're going through a transition, and we know these things by the ceremonies and rituals that we have in our lives, right? A baby is born, and in various cultures and traditions, we have christenings, we have a bris, we have, these various things. As the children get older, there are bar and bat mitzvahs, there's confirmations, there's quinceañeras. And so some of those are brought in certain contexts of our culture. We also have graduations and various, those kinds of markings of completing of certain things. But what I've often seen is missed is the transformation that a person is going through is not always actually recognized completely. So yes, we see a teen who walks across the stage, gets their diploma, has done all this work to get into maybe a college or is going to go out and get a job. But have we really talked about or really addressed the emotional, psychological, spiritual, relational aspects of what this transition really means? And what I see time and time again is when we don't, we see these breakdowns and these fissures and these challenges in the family unit, in the culture, in the ability for the child to be able to really identify who they are and hold themselves and have their community hold them in a good way, because that's where they're going. And there are real there's like a framework when we really look at rites of passage as to what goes into that. It's this chrysalis stage, and then the breaking out, and then the flying away, being witnessed, and held. And we do those loosely, but I think when we begin to turn our attention to recognizing and really holding frameworks that create more meaning around these, I think we're going to see young people blossom and hold themselves in the world in a little bit different way. So that's what I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, I can tell. That is fabulous. So it brings up some questions for me. Like,
Yeah.
what does that mean? Do I need to like throw a massive party every time this happens? What am I like? I feel like I've totally messed up every rites of passage that I've gone through for mine. But what can it look like? Does it have to be like a massive recognition, celebration? Or what can it look like when we
Yeah.
really acknowledge those moments?
Exactly. It doesn't have to be this big thing. And in fact, your teen does not want that most of the time either. Right.
Good.
So when I turned 16, my mom was insistent that she was going to throw me a sweet 16 birthday party. And I was not happy, because all I really wanted was for her to put that money towards a car, because all I wanted was my freedom. Right. And so I was like, what? This is not what I want. But had my mom and I sat down and had a conversation, and she really recognized and honored, hey, you're getting older, you're going through this moment in time. What does it mean to you? And what's important to you? And hey, guess what? Here's what's important to me. How can we do this thing, and maybe we'll go out and have what feels good to you. Okay, we'll go out and have a dinner, or maybe there's a small gift, and it's a meaningful gift. It's something from the heart. It's something that says, I recognize and honor this transition that you're going through. And the person can receive, the teen can receive it and have a conversation about these things. So the thing about rites of passage is that oftentimes what really happens is we go out into the woods, we go and explore this thing and try to figure out who we are. And when we do, we come back and our community receives us. So they're definitely in the process. And I teach this in a course that I teach. There is a process that we can do that can be as elaborate or simple as it makes sense for you and your family. But the idea is that you're still recognizing these very specific steps along the way. Now, you may have done this yourself, Jennifer, without thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't do this big thing to celebrate these moments, but you probably did, and you didn't realize it. And sometimes when we have more of an awareness, like, oh, this is what I'm doing, then we can see the difference in the changes. But if we've missed a piece, we can always go back and still honor these moments.
You make it sound so beautiful, Amy. And I just want to recognize that maybe the times when it isn't so beautiful, because as teens are becoming, well, teens, I mean, they're meant to be themselves and have a little
Yeah.
pushback a little bit. So what happens when these rites of passage become kind of a friction point, or it, even just day to day becomes friction between the parent and the teen? What do you have any strategies around that?
Well, that's a really great question. And what I will often say is that that friction is actually your red flag, your flag to say, oh, there's a moment here that we need to just stop and recognize that we're not seeing eye to eye about this transition, right? Because they're trying to individuate. Their brain chemistry is changing, and and sometimes what it means is that a parent has to step outside of themselves, and that can often happen with some extra support, right? Working with a parent coach, working with a therapist, working with somebody who they trust to have a little reflection and say, okay, how much of this is about me? How much is about them? And how much is about us and what we're navigating and negotiating together? There should absolutely be pushback at different times with our teens. It's about how we receive it and use it to help create these learning moments for them and for us to grow into better people. So we can keep struggling and fighting, but what we know is that when we fight, there's something deeper. There's usually just a few things that we're fighting about. We're fighting about power and control. We're fighting about recognition. We're fighting about being seen and heard. And so when we get to the kind of the more root cause of what this friction is about and really look at that and not the thing, we can pop out the other side with better clarity and better relating.
Yeah, I love that. And that's exactly, the time that I reached out to parent coaches, which led me to creating the Parent Coach Club, because I know the value in having a parent coach. And so I want to ask you a question. I hope you don't mind, Amy. Can you tie in your nutritional coaching a little bit and how that looks like? Let's say we have a teen um, that is struggling in an area, maybe depression or suicidal thoughts. How do
Yes,
you how do you then tie in the nutritional coaching into that? And
absolutely.
can you just maybe give us an example, or how you would work with someone? Because I know at the beginning of our conversation, I had so many questions around that. That could it be
Yeah.
just something that we need to just change the diet, or look at some nutrients that aren't, that they're not getting?
Yeah, for sure. It's a really great question. And this is why I actually love doing what I'm doing and incorporating these pieces that wouldn't normally seem like they go together. But I will tell you, as a clinician, somebody who worked in community mental health for many, many years with kids, had I known what I know now about nutrition, I think I could have made a completely different impact on these families. Because what we understand is that a lot of times some of these mood, the depression and anxiety symptoms actually stemming from nutrient insufficiencies. So, and we don't even realize that, you know, 70% of our population is actually vitamin D deficient. And vitamin D is actually related to our immune health, but it's also related to our brain health and and it actually relates back to depression in pretty big ways. So there are many, many nutrients. And unless we're looking at them and assessing them, this is something I'm really starting to do a lot more with my families, is offering this opportunity to just do an assessment. Now, it doesn't mean that that's the cause or the reason. We can have lots of reasons why a teen is dealing with depression and anxiety. It could be just the changes in their brain chemistry. It could be genetics. It could be traumas or challenges that happened early in life. It could be just some learned behavior from us if we have those tendencies. So as a social worker, what I was trained to do was what's called a biopsychosocial assessment. I was always looking at the whole body, the whole picture, the whole person, and the whole unit. And if we're not, which we're not in most cases with mood disorders, is we're not always looking at that biological component completely. So if some of those challenges that you're facing with your teen is that their mood is just unbearable, they're having a hard time in school, they're having a hard time paying attention, they can't seem, they're anxious, they're this piece, even just offering an opportunity to assess and determine, could this be one aspect? And it's very simple. Sometimes it's very simple. With a few nutrient changes, with a few diet changes, it can actually shift in big ways very quickly. So I like to be able to bring in all my tools to be able to help a family. And that's one of them I think that's overlooked quite often.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted you to speak into it, because I think it's very unique. And it, every time I talk to you, I'm like, I totally need that. Like, how do I connect with you? Hey, wait, we're connected already. But
We
for
are.
those watching and listening, what is the first step that they need to take to connect with you? You had mentioned an assessment. Is that the first thing you would do
The
when you're
first thing, yeah, the first thing I do is just a quick 20-minute call. I'll talk to anybody for 20 minutes. Like, just put it in the calendar, get to my calendar, make an appointment with me. Let's talk, because that's my favorite thing to do, is just to kind of figure out where would it help you the most? And it may not be me either. I may refer you to somebody who's more appropriate, but that's my jam. I want to sit with you. I want to figure out, okay, what are the pieces to this puzzle, and what tools do we have at our access, or where can we go to get those tools to really assess completely what's going on? Because that's always the first step, right? How many times have people gone to doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor, and they're like, I don't feel good. And the doctors all say, it's in your head. Well, did they do all the tests? Did they look in all the avenues? Did they really look completely at the whole picture? And that's what I love to do. What's the big picture? What are all the pieces? Body, mind, heart, spirit. Where are the pieces, and how can we assess and then make a plan that addresses things one at a time to really put you in the right direction?
That's so wonderful. So I'm going to make sure that that link to your calendar is below in the notes. And then
Yeah.
you had mentioned a course. So do you do one-on-one coaching and also your course, or what are the other options for parents looking for support?
For sure. So I have a few ways to connect with me. I do one-on-one. If you're local in the San Diego area and nutrition is a piece, I do in-person sessions and evaluations. I do remote coaching as well. And it's great with the blood chemistry. I can see the big picture of what's going on, just by having you go to your lab and get the blood taken. And then I can see, but even just the coaching, the relational coaching is something that I love to do. I do it in person and remotely. I work with parents, I work with teens, but I also teach courses. I love to teach these concepts because really my job is to empower the parents and the teens to have the tools to do these things on their own. So in the springtime, I will be teaching my Roots and Wings course, which is for parents of adolescents to really know, like, they have the tools, and I will give you the tools to help mark these moments and learn how to negotiate with your teen in a way that's healthy and empowering both for you and for them. And to launch them in a really good way as they're moving into independence. And right now, one of the things I'm doing for parents of 11th and 12th graders is I've partnered with a really amazing coach, Sonia Montiel. She helps with the college admissions process. So we're doing this free support group every month. It's the third Wednesday of every month. And we just talk about the process of what it means for parents to help their kids through the journey of applying for colleges or not, and what that means and how emotionally that's impacting them, and some strategies and tools to help them through this same kind of process of negotiating the journey of independence. So that's been really awesome. So that's happening once a month. And then, again, I do assessments and figure out, support people one-on-one.
That's so beautiful. And sorry, I had to mute there while you were talking because you can hear the dog barking, the kids home from school. It's real life here.
It's real life. I love
Real
it.
life. And I love that you are partnering with Sonia Montiel as well, who is also in the Parent Coach Club, two amazing women working together and doing so many great things. Thank you so much, Amy, for being here today. I love to leave our parents with just one little nugget of one thing they can do right now. I know we were talking about, the helping our teens sprout their
Yep.
wings, and we talked about rites of passage, the nutritional component. Is there one little tidbit, one little nugget you can leave us with that can kind of set us on a good road to communication, connection with our teens?
Yeah. So I think there are just so many I could choose from. I think I've talked about a few, at least in terms of asking for help. But the one thing that's coming to mind right now is to stay curious. So I just believe that curiosity is your best friend when it comes to your teens. That asking, they don't like us to ask questions, but when they do start talking, and they will, right? When you're in the car, when you're in places, and when you hear things that make you like want to say no, I invite you to just stop and take a deep breath and just say, what can I be curious about right now with my teen? What can I ask that's going to help them to understand that I am not here to tell them what to do, but I really want to know who they are. And that is probably my one tip for right now.
That is beautiful. I'm going to leave it right there. I'm not here to tell them what to do.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Just be there for them. And that is beautiful. Thank you so much. I hope you come back, Amy, and you tell us about all the other great things you're doing, but I'm going to make sure that all the links are there for everyone to find you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's been such an honor. I really appreciate it.